So hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about anti-patterns or dysfunctions that I have seen organizations are doing as part of the implementation of scaling agile. Now, when we say scaling agile, we mean hundreds, in some cases thousands of people working on the same product or the same solution. As Soren mentioned, I'm working in Agilesparks and I'm also a SPCT, Safe Program Consultant Trainer. Now, I will mention terms from SAFE, from Scaled Agile Framework, but the talk here is on scaling agile practices in general. So let's clear up some basic SAFE terms that I will use. First of all, there is a term that is called ART, Agile Release Train. So the Agile Release Train is team of agile teams. This is like a virtual organization that contains agile teams inside, and they are delivering value or delivering the product together. Another term is PI. PI stands for program increment. This is a cadence-based event. This is like a set of 4 to 6 iterations. Some organizations are doing that as quarterly based planning. And this is quite similar to what Jeff talks about, having quarterly based planning, and in addition to that, a few quarters forward. The important part is that the cadence of the PI is part of the cadence of the Agile Release Train. The third term that I'm going to use is value stream. Value stream is a series of steps that the organization is doing in order to deliver value. So value stream starts with a trigger, like I want a package to be delivered. It goes through different steps, and eventually the value is delivered to the customer, or the package is being delivered to whoever I wanted it to be delivered. So value stream and Agile Release Trains are long-lived. They are not like projects that have start date and end date. They are long-lived. So before we cover the dysfunctions, it's worth to mention the essential SAFE toolkit that you see here. This is used to verify that you are implementing the 10 core essential things in scaling agile. We will cover some of it now, not all of it. And out of the many dysfunctions that I see in the field around scaling, I chose to focus on dysfunctions around the following 4 areas. So we'll talk about big room planning or PI planning anti-patterns. We'll discuss how to organize agile teams and agile release trains. We'll discuss what is inspect and adapt and why is it important. And we'll finish by focusing on flow and how to improve it. So let's get started. So first of all, PI planning. The first thing to note is that PI planning is cadence-based like an iteration or sprint. This is the heartbeat of the Agile Release Train. Jeff talked about quarterly checks in. The PI planning is 8 to 12 weeks. Some organizations are doing that on a quarterly basis. So the main message here is, first of all, if you don't have a larger planning cadence than a sprint, then you should. This is a part of giving predictability to the business on what we are going to deliver in a bit longer term than just an iteration. And the second part that we see as a lot of dysfunction around the quarterly planning or the PI planning is that not everyone attends to the event. And what do we mean by everyone? So when we say everyone, we mean all the agile teams. We mean all the stakeholders of the Agile Release Train. So we are talking about a big room planning where all the teams, all the stakeholders are present. We are planning what we are going to deliver in the next PI, and it actually accelerates decisions. So you want to make sure that, that all the people who can make the decisions are there. In addition to that, the people who are doing the work are the people who should estimate the work, they should plan how to implement it, and they commit to the plan together. So that's the reason we emphasize the need for all the people to be in the PI planning event. Yes, you do need to have some preparations to the event, but most of the time in these 1 to 2 days event is spent on team planning and managing dependencies between teams. So one of the main artifacts of the PI planning is the program board, because we want to focus on dependencies between teams. What we see on the program board is what features are being delivered over time. So we have features being delivered over sprints and iterations, and also dependencies between teams. So the dysfunctions that we see here is that organizations are not having visualization on when do we plan to deliver the features and what are the dependencies. The other part is that in many cases, the program board is not updated during the execution of the PI. So what we emphasize is that we want to make sure that the program board stays current. It reflects the changes that happen during the PI execution. And you can also use the program board while you're doing Scrum of Scrum and monitoring the progress of the delivery. And you are discussing whether we have new dependencies, what are the blockers, what are the impediments. That's about PI planning. The second area of this function I want to talk about is about the way that Agile teams and Agile release trains are organized. Remember, Agile release train is team of Agile teams. And I want to start by showing an example I have seen in a few of my recent implementations. So I came to an organization and they said that scaling doesn't work for them. Now they have this structure of Agile release trains that you see here. And it basically Agile release trains that are organized around skills of people or technology. And if you look at the backlog of the organization, you will see that many features requires more than one Agile release train in order to deliver the feature. Now, if you have this type of situation, you have a lot of dependencies, not just between teams, but between arts, which is much more difficult to manage, much more difficult to address. This is the reason why we emphasize the need to implement real Agile teams and trains. So it's not just that the Agile team is cross-functional, and the Agile release train itself is cross-functional as well. So our goal is to minimize dependencies between teams and to minimize dependencies between trains, so we can deliver value faster. So this is the reason SAFe talks about this dual operating system. The dual operating system means that we have on the right side the hierarchy of the organization. This is the structure of the organization that we have. And usually this hierarchy creates silos in the organization. This creates handoffs or gates between the different steps, and it slows down the delivery. So in order to address these delays, we have on the left side the value stream network. The value stream network is actually improving the way we communicate between the different business units in the organization. And the value stream network is actually the Agile release train and the value stream. And the emphasis here is that these two coexist together. Some organizations are making mistake and think that we need to get rid of the hierarchy. But what SAFe recommends is, at least at the beginning, make sure that they coexist. The hierarchy is needed for scaling the organization, for stability, and so on. So identifying this value stream network is critical. And this is the reason, if you look at the SAFe implementation roadmap, one of the first steps in the implementation roadmap is identify value stream and arts. And many organizations are skipping that. I want to emphasize that before you jump and create teams and create trains, make sure that you are doing this type of value stream identification. What we want to do is kind of a workshop that takes you through the steps in order to identify the right structure. We don't have enough time to go into the details of this workshop, but basically we start from a customer journey. This is the operational value stream. And out of those customer journeys, We look at different system, people, and so on. And eventually, in the process of the workshop, we come up with the right agile release train structure and also the right agile team structure. Again, minimizing dependencies. Now, it's worth to note here that SAFe also adapts the team topologies that Manuel was talking about in his keynote. And we actually scale the team topologies to art topologies. So we have stream-aligned arts, we have complicated subsystem art, and in some cases, we may need also to have platform art. So in the same value stream, in the same product, you can have a mixture or a hybrid solution for how the arts are organized, how the agile release train are organized. And now we move to the next dysfunction around retrospective on the art level. So all of you are probably familiar with retrospective on the team level. Here we are talking about retrospective on the agile release train level. And the retrospective on the agile release train level starts with a PI system demo. This is something that shows what we actually delivered in the cadence of the PI in the last 2 to 3 months. And the idea here is, again, making sure that you are aligned between what was the vision of the stakeholders or the vision of the business and what we actually delivered. And this is another opportunity. The PI system demo is another opportunity for business people to give feedback on what we delivered. Now, attendance of business people is usually challenging, that they are very busy people. And this is another dysfunction that we see, and we need those business people to be part of the PI planning. We need them to be part of the system demo to provide feedback. We also need them throughout the PI itself, but if they can't attend to the iterations demo, at least we ask them to attend to the PI system demo. And one of the role of the Lean Agile leaders in the organization is to make sure that those people attend to both the PI planning and the PI system demo. The second part of the Inspect and Adapt is the problem-solving workshop. And this is the retrospective on the art level. So the dysfunctions that we see here is usually it's not being done. And if organizations are doing something like that, it is done usually by Scrum Master, team leaders, or other leaders in the organization. So I want to emphasize that if you want to improve the way that you are doing the PI planning, the way that you are executing the PI, you should have this problem-solving workshop with all the Agile Release Train members attending that. And this is, again, emphasis on alignment between business and the execution by the teams. And the problem-solving workshop is the great or the power of it is that you have all the people who can make the decisions in the problem-solving workshop. So you address systematic problems that are causing you to deliver slowly, around quality, around the process that you are doing, and around the way that you are doing the PI planning. And when you are doing this event, you actually need to make sure that you come up with action items. One of the dysfunctions that we see a lot of times is that you have a lot of discussions as part of the retrospective. You have a lot of complaints that are coming from different people, but no action items are being handled, which is of course a dysfunction. So the Inspect and Adapt ends with 1 to 3 improvement items. And we want to make sure that those improvement items are going into the backlog of the Agile Release Train. And we also need to make sure that we allocate capacity to that. So if we allocate capacity to that, it will most definitely have a greater chance to be implemented. So you don't want to be in a situation that you inspect and forget. So the dysfunction here is make sure that you don't have the dysfunctions of not having the inspect and adapt, having too many items, selection items, and not following up on them, and also make sure that it's part of the capacity of the Agile release train to handle those improvement items. And the last dysfunction I want to talk about is actually a lack of flow or focusing on flow. And in this picture, flow means how fast the cars are getting from one place to another. In solution development, we talk about how fast are we completing the work items. Work items are stories and features. And when we talk about flow, we actually talk about Kanban systems. And Kanban systems are great at visualization. They show the flow. And the important measurements here are the lead time, how much time it takes us from the moment a work item appears on the board until it's getting to the done. And the other measurement is cycle time, how much time it takes us to complete an item in terms of calendar days from the moment I started working on it until it's done. So usually the dysfunctions that we see is that organizations are not using the Kanban boards for feature level or for epic level. And if they are doing that, they are not measuring cycle time. And we want to do that again on the team level and on the Agile release train level. So once you start measuring it, what we want to focus on is how to improve it. And we want to reduce the cycle time. Now, why do we want to reduce the cycle time? We want to reduce the cycle time because we want to make sure that we get faster feedback. That's what Agile is all about. We want to deliver value faster, and we want to have less context switch, so we are more focused on the current items that we are working on. How can we reduce the cycle time? We can reduce the cycle time, first of all, by limiting work in process. This is part of Kanban, but again, many organizations are not really implementing the WIP limits. So we are saying, stop starting new stuff, start finishing the things that you are working on. And another thing is that we want to make sure that we are swarming on backlog items. That means we put as many as possible people on the same feature and complete the feature the fastest way possible. So the cycle time report or the control chart report that is shown here is basically showing on the x-axis the dates, and the y-axis is how many days have passed. And we are looking at average cycle time. So the idea here is to measure cycle time for stories on the team level, but also measure average cycle time for the Agile release train level. And when you are doing the retrospective on the team level and retrospective on the art level, make sure that you are addressing the cycle time and discussing how to reduce it. So these are the 4 areas of dysfunction, and I want to summarize. So first of all, make sure that you have a cadence of API. Make sure that all the Agile release train members and the business are attending that. This is part of giving predictability to the business side. The other thing is using the value stream identification workshop and making sure that the Agile release trains are optimized for communication and minimizing dependencies. Focus on flow and measure cycle time. We just mentioned that, and you need to use measurements that show value delivery. Jeff talked about outcome-based delivery. This is the PI objectives that we are doing as part of the PI planning. It's very similar to iteration goal that Dana was talking about. And the last thing, make sure that you improve your process. Use the problem-solving workshop as part of the inspect and adapt to keep challenging your comfort zone and improve the processes, whether it's around quality, around definition of done, or any other things that are blocking the Agile release train. So that's it about my talk. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Ofer, for the great session. I learned from it. And we have two questions from the audience. We need to do it quickly because we have to move to the next session. So the first session is about thoughts on those organizations who do think or want that all ART members need to be there, especially typically the developers, or just the manager's decision maker.
So the quick answer is many people complain that they don't see the big picture. They work from one iteration to another, from one sprint to another. So the PI planning is around alignment. What do we want to get as objective for the coming quarter or the coming PI? And we want commitment of the agile teams, and they are the ones who are doing the planning. And most of the time in the PI planning is on planning the next quarter or the next 2 to 3 months. So it's not a wasted time, it's time allocated for doing proper planning and managing the dependencies, which are the number one item that is causing delays to teams, because they need to do integrations between teams, they need to do integration between trains. This is something that takes a lot of time and causes a lot of delays in many organizations.
Okay, thank you. And for the next question, is improving flow of the art something that the RTE should own?
Yes, definitely.